Hi guys, this is just a very short case study. I just said I'd go over some Power BI data with you guys. Obviously month end, I just want to show you something. So the good news is we've just had a record month by, I think it's our largest ever growth in 1 month, which historically has not been that good for the trade. So really happy, but I just wanted to show you how we achieve this. So you can see decent growth in the number of vehicles that we saw year on year, which is good. The revenue is abnormally large, so we saw a huge spike in revenue and a pretty big spike in gross profit as well. Now, what this came down to was some staff training and just data analysis from last month, really. So I'm just going to run very quickly through a PowerPoint presentation that we did, where we spotted some trends in data and then decided to act on those trends. So to start with, we wanted to look at efficiency and why. I mean, we're 60%-ish efficient at £60 an hour. It's not too bad, but I would expect it to be a little bit better than that. So why is it that 42% of our time isn't being sold? This was just put out to all the staff. Just had a basic Q&A and just tried to come up with some ideas on what it is that's causing lack of efficiency. But the point I wanted to get across was that we had spare time. What I then went on to do was a little exercise in average invoice value and why this metric is so unbelievably essential. You should all be looking at average invoice value and GP per invoice as well. These two metrics are really important, but just as a quick exercise, just look at this. So if we increased our invoice value by £10 per invoice, it resulted in £300,000 per year revenue, but the goal was £30 per invoice. That's my goal, is to increase our average invoice value by £30, which is £900,000 per year difference. So you can see as a company, from my experience, and I don't tend to pitch this against other businesses, but from my experience, our average invoice value is pretty low in the industry. And what we can actually see here, when we increased the labour rate, the average invoice value didn't increase that much, certainly less than it should have done. But anyway, if we look how this revenue translates to profit, so we are working to about a 65% margin. Again, that's pretty average in the industry from what I've seen, 65 to 70. Anything above 70 is really good, but 65 or above is about where you should be. But 65% at 900 is £585,000 a year gross profit. Now, if we can achieve these figures without changing our overheads or costs, then this is actually net profit. So complete bottom line money. And split between the branches is the same as £97,000 gross profit per branch. And like I said, if we can achieve that without increasing the overheads, then that is net profit. So it's a lot of money. It's a lot of profit, essentially, for seemingly not doing an awful lot. So how do we achieve this? How do you increase your average invoice value? So again, it was more of a Q&A, but we just wanted to come up with some ideas on what it was that actually affected invoice value. And the key things really are service supplements and service scheduled work, but vehicle inspections. And I'm going to show you why we came to the conclusion of vehicle inspections. I know it sounds obvious. If you inspect a vehicle and you find there's extra work on the vehicle and you sell the work, then the invoice value goes up. It is that obvious, but the data backs this up as well. So on the next slide, we can see that one branch in particular was going out of their way to do vehicle inspections. The manager took it upon himself and he just started doing inspections more than the other branches. And consistently, his invoice value was higher than the other branches. And now it wasn't a rule, but it was the data trend was pretty strong that a percentage of inspections resulted in a higher average invoice value. But it wasn't the only factor, it's just one of the strong ones. So now I questioned all the managers, why should we VHC every car? Is it actually what we want to do as a business? Is it good for the customer? And when you actually look at the reasons for VHC in every car, you'd be daft not to, really. So it results in a higher average invoice value, as we know. I'm a little bit scared of speaking about duty of care because I think you open yourselves up to all sorts of issues if you actually mention this, but honestly, do we have a duty of care? It's a good debate. It is a genuine better service for the customers, and it's better customer engagement. But again, so much of this is how you communicate this with the customer, because even if you have the best intentions and you're completely honest, if you communicate it badly, it's going to have a bad effect on your relationship with the customer. But what I wanted to get across to the staff was this is purely passive, meaning that there is no forceful selling. You don't tell them the car is dangerous. You don't keep the car away from them. You just let them know what we've done, and then you inform them of what we have found, and then you just let them make the decision. It's higher margin work, generally speaking, and the reason I say it's higher margin work is because the car is already in the building, and if you're lucky, the car is still on the ramp, so there's just less lost time. So at the end of all that, why would we not VHC every car? We then, very briefly, now I'm not a sales trainer at all, and we're sending actually all the service advisors to John Batten's service advisors training, and I recommend you guys do the same. But I wanted to get some points across to the staff whilst they did this before they had John's training. So it's a complimentary health check. I got this from Leo Dack. I don't like the term free health check, but I really like complimentary health check. You need to be sensitive. Don't condemn a vehicle. Make sure you tell the customer, especially if there's nothing wrong with the vehicle. Email the inspection with the pictures, because that just removes the doubt from the customer. If the customer wants it doing, make sure you're prepared to give them a timescale. Don't tell them there's something wrong with the car and then not have an option for them. And this was the key. Don't sell anything you wouldn't sell to your family. Because, like I said, VHCs have a bad reputation, reasonably justified. I always had that opinion. I've very fortunately got to spend quite a lot of time with Kev at Cedar Garage and just saw how VHCs should be done properly. It completely changed my mind on VHCs. So we got all this across to the staff. Another slide actually points to consider. You're not ripping the customer off. This is an upsell. Upsell's the dirty word. Would you want to know if it was your vehicle? Yes, you would. Would you have the work done if you know about it? Probably. Nobody likes to go back to a garage more than they need to. If you're a busy person and someone identifies some work on your car that doesn't need doing for a couple of months, the odds are you're just going to get it done just for convenience. And this was the key one as well. A bigger bill doesn't mean you're more expensive if you can get that across to the customer. So again, quite relative to another post talking about value for money. If you have a high average invoice value, it doesn't mean you're more expensive if you are good enough to get your value across to the customer. So how do we achieve this? Can we VHC 60% of the vehicles that we get coming through the building? And is that possible without increasing our overheads? So these are the keys. Last but not least, this was coincided perfectly with the release of NPS and surveys. So I was no longer worried about attempting to sell to customers. Really, for the first time that Lindleys have ever outwardly sold anything, essentially, because now I get surveys every night. So this was perfectly in line with the NPS release. So if we go back to the data then, and let's have a look at any trends we can spot on why we saw such an increase in revenue. So, average invoice value, you can see I believe it's our second highest ever average invoice value, outside of Feb earlier this year, which was a bit of a freak. But you can see it's sort of £10 higher than it's been all year. Most importantly, if you look at NPS, it hasn't really suffered. Okay, it's a couple of points down on last month, but the next report I'm going to go to is going to explain why. So if we look at surveys, you can see that whilst the NPS score is down a couple of points, we've surveyed 3 times the amount of customers compared to last month, and nearly 6 times the amount of customers compared to the previous months. Now, it's just a bigger pool of customers. I'm absolutely over the moon with the NPS score that we got this month, especially considering the increase in revenue. So if we go and take a look at VHC analysis, now this is as dramatic as the monthly revenue. So you can see that We've been working at VHCs, but it wasn't until last month that we got the real spike in VHCs. Same with inspections. And then it's this authorized amount, which is just significantly higher than it's ever been before. This would have impacted average invoice value. And of course, it would have impacted revenue. So the point is, we identified a trend using data. We put together a presentation. We didn't demand that the staff did it, but we got everybody on board using the data and just logic and just trying to get everybody to understand, according to data, the average invoice value is directly related to VHCs, and then we just let the staff run with it. And the results have been, well, it's resulted in 1, our best ever month, but 2, our biggest ever growth. So I hope you found that interesting. I hope it inspires conversation. If you have any questions, then please let me know. Thank you.